Have you ever wondered what people thought about animal rights in the 1600s? Well, today we're going to take a look. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Threpticon. Today we're going to talk about Thomas Tryon, who believed in health and happiness to those who shun meat. Who was Thomas Tryon? He was born in 1634 in Bybury, Gloucester, England. He became a successful merchant and hat maker, though he sold beaver pelt hats, so the skin of beavers, and this is a clear contradiction to the vegetarian values. However, he was repentant of this fact later in life. He became an anti-slavery writer after witnessing the institution in Barbados. He became a vociferous vegetarian advocate. And the genres he worked in, he wrote many books in later life, definitely what we'd call today self-help. He talked about health as well. In this books on health, some certain cookbooks. And he died in 1703. And we think about it, during this period, there was a lot of changes to the country he was living in, right? Great Britain changed a lot from 1634 to 1703. It kind of was growing, becoming an empire, having a lot of influence, growing in importance. All right. So who inspired? Tryon was a fellow named Roger Crabb, one of the main inspirations, who was a vegetarian advocate the generation prior. And some famous people whom Tryon inspired would include Benjamin Lay, who I made a video on if you're interested in that, the novelist Aphra Bin, and the famous sort of Renaissance man, Benjamin Franklin. So the intellectual influences on Thomas Tryon. Above all, we have the Bible. He was always talking about the Bible, Adam and Eve, this kind of origin, and even talked about other characters in the Bible that he thought were vegetarian-like, such as Moses, such as King David, pictured here. And then the Renaissance Neoplatonists, the Pythagoreans, believed that there was a kind of primordial religion that linked all the world's religions. That say, for example, Pythagoras had traveled to India and taught them, Brahmanism and Hinduism. Some people said it was the contrary, that he traveled India. But anyway, that there's a kind of connection between these various religious movements. And then reading about sort of travel literature in India and contact with Hinduism and Buddhism, especially Hinduism, had a huge influence on Tryon. I mean, he wrote about it over and over again. He wanted to put everything from a Hindu's point of view, from an animal point of view. And he believed all these things shared a common origin. Even, the Bible, like I said, it was this ancient sort of primordial religion with various branches. And in terms of health, I think he based a lot of his writing on observation of health outcomes. He says, oh, these people eating all this meat, they're not doing as well. They're not doing as well. Though I must say, I've read some of his cookbooks. He does emphasize a lot of animal products, every dish. Eat your salad greens or whatever, your pottage. You take your boiled vegetables, your leaves, your watercress or what have you. You boil it and then you eat it with bread and butter and eggs, etc. Anyway. But I think some of this is based on empiricism. He said, oh, these people eating tons of meat, they're not looking so good. So Tristram Stuart talks about a leap in another direction. I think this is very interesting. So in this book here, The Bloodless Revolution, I'm quoting from it, it was with the help of Indian culture that Tryon freed himself from Christianity's anthropocentric value system and made a leap into another moral dimension. What is this other moral dimension? It is what we'd call today animal rights. The idea that animals have inherent rights and do not exist for humankind to exploit. That's what he's talking about. This idea that all of creation was created for mankind. That's what we're talking about, Christianity, anthropocentric value system. This belief that everything was to serve human beings, right? That they could be killed and chopped up and their lives didn't matter, right? But at the same time, we're talking about the birth of the idea of human rights, right? Humans as citizens, this is the 1600s. He died in 1703. We're 100 years before the French Revolution, before the American Revolution. So these ideas that human beings are born with unalienable rights, in Tryon's mind, is extended also to sentient beings, sentient animals. And then here's some of his works here. This one is called The Way to Health, Long Life and Happiness. Um, Fantastic book. And then here he takes a jab at meat eaters. For some reason, he dedicates several pages to eating meat and the kinds one should eat, but he says that you shouldn't eat it at all, but people continue to do it. And so it's interesting. Though I have before shown the inconveniences of the feeding upon flesh, so commonly and in such excess as is nowadays practiced, and rather recommend the lovers of wisdom and health to the more innocent use of grains, fruits, and herbs. Yet since there is no stemming the tide of popular opinion and custom, and people will still gorge themselves with the flesh of their fellow animals, and then he goes on. But I like the language he uses: gorge themselves on flesh, feed on flesh. I mean, he's very explicit in what he's talking about. And how he has a negative view of it. And in the same book, he talks about the point of view of the sheep. He's talking about not every spring to furnish the voluptuous tables with a lamb. They call them old crones and esteem them little better than dogs and cats. But if they imagine they can make money of us, so once again, the owners, the humans, they think they can make money out of us rather than eating these old sheep that aren't very tasty for people. But if they realize they can make money of us, then they, for a small time, regale or flatteringly feast us with store of pasture. And when they think we are fat enough to gratify their extravagant desires and appetites, then we are foaled, driven, abused, and finally have our throats cut and our bodies quartered as if we had committed treason, which I think that's a fantastic line. I mean, the sheep, just for existing, are treated like the worst criminals possible in human society. He also has a book of aphorisms called Wisdom's Dictates. And here he talks about not eating animal foods and the benefits that he believes that brings. So aphorism number 188, such separation from the animal, bestial, and savage nature, and all foods that proceed from thence, and to be contented with innocent vegetations, do increase both humility and humanity, and make the body clean, chaste, and healthy. Which I think that's a nice way of putting things. Let's put it that way. Make the body clean, chaste, and healthy. That's what he believes, that you're sort of morally clean, you're more morally pure because you haven't committed crimes, chaste because of temperance, you're not, overindulging, and healthy just because it makes your body healthy. So here's my question: why did a man who made a great deal of money selling animal-based hats turn to a vegetarian diet? We can talk about it in the comment sections below. I'm interested to see everyone's ideas. And with that, I will say thanks for watching. See you next time.